Having been released last year in their native Denmark, the second self-titled studio album from the pop soul group Lukas Graham sees it repackaged and released here in the UK. The group came into notoriety after their debut release 7 years became a smash hit over here, claiming 5 consecutive weeks at the top. A song that thematically is a very personal and meaningful track revolving around lead singer Lukas Grahams' youth, the passing of his father and achieving success, themes that are a constant throughout this album, and overall is a rather pleasing album with plenty to enjoy about it. 7 Years opens the album, and my opinion of the song can be found here. The next track, Take the World by Storm, which is about Grahams' desire to travel around the world and make his name known by all. This one is a lot more upbeat with lingering piano chords, drum beat, hand claps and backing vocalists. It's a decent track, but to me, I find the added vocal warble throughout the verse a real turn off, and the backing vocals in the chorus sound somewhat off key, and I think it would sound better taken down a semitone or two. The next track, Mama Said, which has this charming and infectious vibe to it that wouldn't sound out of place in an Annie-style musical, goes back to Grahams' youth, being brought up in a less than extravagant and fortunate household, spending holidays visiting parents' friends and getting handed down clothing, and reminisces on telling his folks about his dreams, while simultaneously being mocked by his peers, but constantly receiving reassurance from his parents. It's a joyful and fun little track, with the traffic sounds in the background in the opening, the bright plinking chords, child vocalists, staccato strings in the verse becoming prolonged in the chorus, and drum piece. It just brings a smile to my face every time I hear it. The chorusless Happy Home is a reflective track where Graham talks about achieving his fame and fortune, yet despite what he makes here on in, he is still afflicted by the fact that his father isn't going to see him prosper and further his career, yet he recognises that the company he keeps and the family he has back at home will be there for him to support him throughout the still present heartache. Although it does sound at some points that Graham is fighting to keep up with the time signature and the instrumentation could have been a little more fuller, the strings could have had a little more prominence, and the electric guitar should do something more than just brief strumming, it's still good for what it is. The album then steps away from the sentimental tracks with the song Drunk in the Morning, one of the album's low points, a song recanting a scenario where the protagonist is calling his woman while still drunk off his tits and wants a bit of action, despite admitting that he had it off with 3 separate women the night previous, but they mean nothing to him because he's talking to her. Wow dude. Coming off a bit of a slime ball there. Constant staccato piano chords, hint of brass instrumentation and drum beat, it can't detract away from the sleaziness of the lyrics. The next song, Better Than Yourself, Criminal Mind Part 2, where the instrumentation is practically the Ludwig van Beethoven piece, Moonlight Sonata, is Graham recanting a tale where he visits a childhood friend who is currently serving time in jail. It's a deeply intimate and raw track, but I don't know, I can't help but feel that lifting the piano track and doing nothing but slightly speeding it up feels kind of cheap and doesn't really enhance the track all that much, at least for me. Don't You Worry About Me centres on Graham catching up with an old friend and asking them how they've been, but instead they try and turn the attention back onto Graham, later going on to insist that despite him losing his father, he still persists on with life and recognises that he cannot stay mired in the past and has to move on. Along with the gospel style instrumentation, organ, keyboard, jaunty piano, electric guitar, bass and drum beat, it's another enjoyable track, and Gram's vocals have a sense of enjoyment and optimism to them. It's quite endearing actually. Another song that deviates away from Lucas's own demons is the track What Happened to Perfect, which details the imminent ending of a relationship and the protagonist reflecting on what happened in order for everything to end up at this point. Again with the organ, keyboard, washed out drum beat and strings, it's not a terrible track, but it's not exactly fulfilling. It needs some more detail and something a bit more gutsy for me to really give it my full endorsement. And then we get to the lowest point of the album, the song Strip No More, where one night, the song's protagonist goes to a strip club and meets some woman who he has a particular fondness of, who goes on to, quote, make a man out of him. But when he goes back to meet her, he discovers that she no longer works at said club. Irrespective of the high-pitched piano chords, hand claps, bouncy bass line before transitioning into a more upbeat, funky track, it does nothing to enhance the lyrics. In fact, it really makes the song stand out even more for how sleazy the song actually is. And the spoken/rap third verse? No, Lucas, just no. The penultimate track, You're Not There, is solely a tribute to Gram's deceased father, displaying his hurt and melancholy about the fact that his father isn't alive to see his son for the man he is today, or to see how much he has succeeded. With the lingering bass line, distorted and clear picked guitar pieces, piano and electric keyboard, the beat doesn't change all that much, but like Happy Home, the song's subject matter stands above the music. And finally, the album ends on the track Funeral, a rather odd closer where Graham expresses the desire that when he eventually dies, he wants his funeral to resemble that of a Norse funeral, where all who attend are not in mourning, but instead everyone is enjoying themselves, drinking, partying and celebrating the good times they shared and for the fact that he was alive in the first place. Another gospel style track that's predominantly backed by piano with brief interludes of keyboard organ and soul vocalists. It's definitely a somber yet upbeat end to what I feel is a pretty solid album with many things to like. In conclusion, the album proves that there's more to Lukas Graham than 7 years. Although I will admit that song is hands down the best track on the album, and tonally the album does tend to be all over the place, and that there are 2 tracks on the album that do kind of sour what in reality is a sweet and genuine send up to 4 Chandler's childhood, friends and family, and there's a great sense of humanity to the album. Also, I would have liked a little more focus on the soul genre this album occasionally boasts, as the few moments we get are enjoyable. Other than that, it's a solid album and one I do recommend giving a listen. Overall, I score this album a 75 out of 100.